Welcome to your in-depth weekly astrology overview and zodiac forecast for week commencing the 5th of August. I'm going to share with you shortly the event chart right at the start of the week. This provides some very important information that we can all collectively relate to, but please stay with me. I will then go through each of the 12 signs from Aries through to Pisces to give you a flavour of what you can expect in terms of your ascendant, sun or the moon. Now I've launched my annual special offer. You can order your year 2025 transit forecast, but get the rest of 24 free. And also in my special offer of 30% off, you can get your life roadmap report. The combination of all this information, which is fantastic value, will give you serene insights into what makes you tick, but also when to time your moves. If you've had your tropical chart done before, but would like to explore Draconic, why not order this package in that format? Please see below. Also, if you prefer your astrology in whole sign, I can do those for you. And if you don't know your time, my unique solar package will really help to give you a lot of extra and brilliant information. Please see below for more. So on the screen now, I'm showing the event chart right at the start of the week. And as ever, we need to be mindful of the luminaries. And you can see the sun's at 13 degrees and 4 and the moon in Leo at 19 degrees and 9. They're so close together. The moon is just separating, but they reached an absolute unison as last week came to a close with that glorious Leo new moon. And that energy does continue to cascade into this week. It can be very joyful and it can be very playful, certainly very social too. But we also have the energy in the sign of Gemini, which is influencing things brightly as well. We have Mars, the path of fortune, and Jupiter all linking to those Leo energies. So there's a real sense of optimism, but we also have some pragmatism developing because Mercury, the planet of communication, back in the second sign it rules of Virgo, goes into a retrograde from Monday through to the 15th of the month. But also on the same day, Venus joins up with Mercury in Virgo, and Venus is not at its best in Virgo. It's known as being in its fall. So Venus's role here, the planet of relation and money, is to try to find ways to be practical in the way it links to others. And with Mercury's retrograde, perhaps we need to become a little bit more mindful of taking the brilliant ideas that all that Leo and Gemini energy is helping us to develop and packaging them into something, a format which has some kind of tangible benefit or outcome. So that's the challenge right at the start of the week. Now, ironically, the Sun and Jupiter reach one of their most enhancing from an energy and vibrancy and fortune viewpoint climaxes of the year on Wednesday. So that's really uplifting, terrific. And we also have a conjunction between Mercury and Venus on Thursday. So if we can grapple with things and use the Mercury retrograde positively, so we make sure our thinking is not saying, look, we're bound to have some snags. And of course, Mercury in Virgo could mean, in its retrograde, some changes around appointments. There may be some minor details that we don't take quite enough notice of that could cause some issues. There may be a trusted domestic appliance which finally fails us after years of dedicated service. All of those things are normal Mercury retrograde events, but we also need to know that it's almost become an urban myth that everything will go wrong. But actually, we can use the Mercury retrograde to rethink, recalibrate and reset in a very constructive way. So if we use virtue and discrimination and the meticulous attention to detail that Mercury in Virgo demands, there is something we can gain from it. But particularly by Thursday, it's a very lucky combination between Mercury and Venus. So you can see that this is a week that has some real contrast, but those contrasts continue apace as the week goes on. Because as the week's developing, so Jupiter is inching closer to a square with Saturn, and that becomes exact on the 19th. But also Jupiter is linking more with, or Mars is linking more with Jupiter, and that becomes exact on the 14th. Now that combination between Mars and Jupiter is very dynamic in terms of expressing our ideas, or perhaps a love of moving around, being more physically active. But the combination of that energy and the tension building restraint of Saturn does need some care, particularly by the end of this week, because as much as Jupiter, particularly in that sextile with the Sun on Wednesday, is about go, 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 Saturn can be about, well, you can go, but make sure you're aware of these series of potential challenges. So in the sign of Pisces, it's a much more psychological influence. So if we're discussing something lightly and we're not really being mindful of the deeper reasons or the deeper motives we have or someone else has, we could start to feel some resistance by the end of this week. Now, Jupiter and Saturn will reach a peak of their square on the 19th of this month. So it's just important to be conscious of that. But also the Sun is in a quincunx with Saturn later this week. Now that's a 150-degree angle. So the warmth, affection, dynamism and charisma of the Sun in Leo is tempered by that more emotional energy of Saturn in Pisces. So as much as we can be out there going for it, really showcasing what is fun and dazzling about life, the Virgo energy is asking us to take care of the details, and the Pisces energy through Saturn is asking us to understand the more psychological, emotional or spiritual dimension of whatever is engaging us. And that's really what this week is about. Now please stay with me as I go through each of the 12 zodiac signs from Aries through to Pisces. From Aries to your in-depth weekly forecast for week commencing the 5th of August for the Ascendant, the Sun or the Moon. Just to say, my very special year 2025 personal horoscope forecast is available now, and you'll get the rest of year 2024 free and 30% off in my special package along with your life roadmap report. Please see the link below for more. Now, as we go into this new week, Aries, we need to be mindful of your ruler Mars. Mars at 10 degrees and 18 in the sign of Gemini has just made its way into the second decan of that sign, which is subruled by Venus. And Venus, of course, is very much to do with relating, but it can be about money. Don't underestimate the impact that your words and your expression can have on other people. In fact, by the middle of the month, when Mars catches up with Venus and they come into an exact conjunction, it could be one of the most potent moments of the whole year, because something you're really invested in and engaged in, or maybe it's a person you're really drawn towards, the energy around that connection can be electrified, be very potent, passionate, and if you've got something to tell people about, you can be very persuasive too. But of course, we're still feeling the warmth of that beautiful Leo new moon, which for you, very good in terms of your physical vitality. If you have got some creativity and flair and artistry you'd like to share with people, there is a tremendous window of opportunity over the next month. But it's also true that as we begin this week, so Uranus, the planet of surprises, is in a tense right angle with Venus. Now, that peaked towards the end of last week, but it's still in operation. So you could feel a bit more impulsive about your resources still. But what can help you is that Mercury going retrograde on Monday and joined by Venus as it moves on, just gives you a little bit of a nudge to make sure that you check the detail of things. So if there is something that you're feeling very attracted to, maybe even someone you're feeling attracted to, Venus moving on as Monday develops and joining up with Mercury broadly and exactly on Thursday can just be a useful reminder to make sure that there is a practical dimension to consider. So there's a lot of excitement, certainly, and a lot of dazzle and razzle even at the start of this week. But that combination just helps you to get one foot onto terra firma. But also, as we come into this week, we are going to see Jupiter start to square up to Saturn. It's quite a complex influence, and over the last 16 months, Saturn has been reminding you of past issues, past people, past experiences, and maybe you've had to go through some kind of review. Maybe you've been releasing things that no longer serve your greater good, and there may be some friendships that have come to a complete close. Maybe it's a job that you've completed your cycle on. And what the energy in Gemini is asking you to do is think and discuss new possibilities. So just be aware when you are caught up in having these, that you just keep an eye on those experiences that you've gained in the past, because we can all get swept up in the excitement of a connection with someone or some people, perhaps even people in your daily life with Mars and Jupiter active in your third house, but just stay mindful of what you've learned in the past. So a great opportunity this week to continue travelling forwards with the things, the people and the connections which excite and engage you, but just be mindful of the details and also the psychological lessons of the last 16 months. It's been a pleasure being with you. Have a great week, Aries. Take care and goodbye. Welcome, Taurus, to your in-depth weekly forecast for week commencing the 5th of August for the Ascendant, the Sun or the Moon. Just to say, my very special year 2025 personal horoscope forecast is available now, and you'll get the rest of year 2024 free and 30% off in my special package along with your life roadmap report. Please see the link below for more. As this week begins, your ruler Venus is set to move on Monday into a sparkling part of your chart, the 5th house, which is very glamorous. But it has been squaring up with Uranus late last week, and that coincided with the new moon in Leo. So the combination of those energies could have made you a bit more impulsive when it comes to buying something for your home, or perhaps inviting people around, playing host. But essentially the new moon is encouraging you over the next month to keep working on nurturing the parts of your situation, the soothing parts of life. So being with the people that are ease into your senses, but also connecting to the places that you feel most serene. So that could be outside in nature, it could be in the comfort of your abode. But Venus moving on Monday does have some real opportunities for you, because Venus in the 5th house is very glamorous. It may not technically be at its best in the sign of Virgo, but for you it gives you a chance to be more playful and demonstrative. It's also linking later this week with Mercury, which of course goes retrograde on Monday. So there may be some opportunities to bring some extra sparkle to your social world, but it could be a bit fluid. There could be some arrangements made and then some changes. It doesn't change the fact on Thursday there's a beautiful conjunction between Mercury and Venus, which can be very fortunate. But the Sun does continue for now in that 4th house, and even if you are wanting to link to people, it may be the most familiar places that you can connect, which you'll prefer, or perhaps inviting them around and playing host. And also Jupiter, the planet of growth, is still emphasising the potential to make improvements or to gain financially through something linked to a property or family money, and that opportunity peaks on Wednesday. However, Saturn, in the part of your scope to do with your future, your highest hopes and your friendships, does bring a rather harsh energy to bear in the second half of this week. When it comes to your emotional life, perhaps there's someone you're connected to who doesn't quite get the more tender part of your nature, and the quincunx between the Sun and Saturn can be quite challenging. But also there is a square between Saturn and Jupiter. So if you are wanting to make progress around finances, I think the important thing is to make sure that anything you do is really carefully thought through, and Mercury retrograde therefore can be a prompt to do precisely that, to not rush to action, to really take your time to analyse any information, particularly of a more speculative nature. So if you've got someone who's trying to prime you up for some kind of side hustle or get rich quick scheme, try to slow it down, make your own decisions. Don't be in any way feeling that you've got to do something to please another person. So this week continues to be a time that's very much about the emotional dimension, very much about protecting yourself, nurturing yourself, being with people you really feel comfortable and safe with. But there can be a more playful dimension too. It just can be a little bit fluid. Have a great week, Taurus. All the best and goodbye. Welcome, Gemini, to your in-depth weekly forecast for week commencing the 5th of August for the Ascendant, the Sun or the Moon. Just to say, my very special year 2025 personal horoscope forecast is available now, and you'll get the rest of year 2024 free and 30% off in my special package along with your life roadmap report. Please see the link below for more. Now you can be the consummate communicator, and with Mars and Jupiter set to meet in the sky on the 14th of this month, your passion and enthusiasm for your ideas is certainly going to ramp up from now until then. You've also got the Sun and the Moon in Leo, which for you is your 3rd solar house, so very redolent of the energies of your sign, in support for you right at the start of this week. So if there is something that you're feeling bubbly about, inspired about, or it's a social connection, it can all seem very go, go, go. However, Mercury, your ruler, does go into a retrograde on Monday. It's joined by the planet of relating, Venus, and they're both in your 4th house. This suggests that despite the bright and breezy energy that's going between your sign and Leo, there can be some more delicate strands that you need to watch out for this week, and it may relate to people you're close to. Now, whether that's extended family or blood relatives or people you encounter on an everyday basis, the potential for a snag or a misunderstanding is inevitably heightened with a Mercury retrograde in this area through to the middle of the month. But there's also opportunity. So you could find yourself actually getting together with a sibling, perhaps on Thursday, when Mercury and Venus connect exactly. And ironically, this can be a very fortunate conjunction. Also, the Sun's linked to Jupiter, one of the most energizing in astrology, and also potentially one of the most fortunate, that peaks on Wednesday. So there's great stuff bubbling away, but Mercury retrogrades, of course, can create some snags. And perhaps really you're being asked to just be that much more mindful of the emotional dimension, because just before Venus moves on Monday, it does finish its clash with Uranus in your 12th house. And maybe something exploded into the open at the end of last week that was a much more delicate matter, and it could have been around a romantic relationship, and it may have related to an old topic. And now the opportunity is to not deny the chance to work with this, because you could go potentially into a little bit of a defensive posture. However, as the week goes on, also Saturn and Jupiter, which have two very competing energies, Jupiter about growth, Saturn about restraint, they peak up on the 19th of this month, but they're actually going to become more influential as this week goes on. And for you, Saturn is in the part of your scope to do with responsibilities, and it can be your connection with the wider world or people you encounter in terms of a boss or a line manager. And there too, your desire to invest all this brightness right at the start of the week could be met with a little bit of a muted response. Perhaps not everybody is quite getting what you're wanting to do. And this is where patience and the passage of time will work better than reacting in a very quick way. So just be aware that something may slow down quite quickly as this week goes on, just after it seemed incredibly positive. And that, of course, can in itself, because of the mixed message, it be rather frustrating. But if you prepare for it, you'll be much more set to work with the energy. And just know, by the middle of the month, if you really feel strongly about something, the conviction you have is going to impress someone, and it could be someone truly influential. Have a great week, Gemini. Take care. all the best and goodbye. Welcome Cancer to your in-depth weekly forecast for week commencing the 5th of August for the Ascendant, the Sun or the Moon. Just to say, my very special year 2025 personal horoscope forecast is available now, and you'll get the rest of year 2024 free and 30% off in my special package along with your life roadmap report. Please see the link below for more. We need to be mindful of your ruler, the moon, starting the week as it comes out of last week's new moon in the sign of Leo, which for you is very much about life foundations. And the firmer our life foundations are, the more secure we feel. So anything that gives you a sense of serenity around money or your self-worth is certainly a good thing to have. But with Jupiter feeding into the location of the moon and also the sun exactly on Wednesday, something from your past, it could be a savings plan, an investment, or past effort you've been putting in, or maybe it's more of a spiritual dimension, the way that you're evolving as a person and viewing yourself in a different way can give you a sense of greater self-worth that's beyond the material realm. That can all peak up at the heart of this week. But ironically, at the end of last week, you may have become much more conscious of someone who saw something or sees things in terms of values in a very different way. Maybe a friend, could be a romantic connection, or perhaps you were a little bit more impulsive with your resources. But as we start this week, Venus moves into the sign of Virgo, which is very earthen, it's very practical, but it is about your everyday communications. And Mercury on the same day goes into a retrograde through to the 15th. So those quick communications that we have will require a lot of care through to then. But also on Thursday this week, these two meet and exactly conjunct. And that gives you an opportunity to have a really important discussion. It could be with a neighbour, a friend, it could be with a sibling. It may be that you're going to revisit some technological issues. If you'd like to buy yourself a new piece of hardware or get a new phone or a new mode of transport, Mercury's retrograde can actually be an opportunity to do a review and work out exactly what you need to get to improve the workings of your situation. But of course, Mercury retrograde in the third house could see some software glitches. If you are sending anything or you're buying anything online, do scrutinise the transaction very carefully. But we also have this week, as the week goes on, a growing square between Jupiter, which is about expansion, and Saturn, which is about retraction. Over the last 16 months, some of the joyfulness that Neptune had injected into your world since 2012 in terms of exploring, travelling, different ideas, perhaps some very idealistic ones, have been tempered by the realism of Saturn. And there's more of that to come, especially on the 19th of this month when the square between the two peaks. So it's not to say that you can't still have a very positive outlook, which is very Jupiterian, but the Jupiter energy at the moment is asking you perhaps to embrace more of the psychological realm rather than the material realm. But if you are discussing anything to do with a contract, travel plans, a legal matter, just be aware there could be a little bit of a gotcha. And with Mercury in a retrograde, the need to use precision to the maximum is really important. Also, as this week draws on, the Sun does square up to Saturn too. So as much as you could see an improvement in your finances this week and over the next 3 or 4 weeks from the new moon, just be aware that anything linked to overseas investments or things that perhaps are a little bit more speculative that you're not quite sure of the information of, proceed with a degree of caution. Have a great week, Cancer. Thank you so much for joining me, and goodbye. Welcome, Leo, to your in-depth weekly forecast for week commencing the 5th of August for the Ascendant, the Sun or the Moon. Just to say, my very special year 2025 personal horoscope forecast is available now, and you'll get the rest of year 2024 free and 30% off in my special package along with your life roadmap report. Please see the link below for more. As the week begins, we need to be mindful of your ruler, the sun, but also the sheer might of the new moon in your sign, which highlighted the end of last week. That pours its energy into this week too. If there is something that you want to revitalize that's an ongoing strand in your life, or something you want to bring about afresh, or you want to give yourself some kind of dazzling makeover, or you want to showcase your creativity and flair, this week certainly gives you lots of support as it begins. And part of the reason for that is Jupiter. Jupiter linked into that new moon, and the alliance with the sun reaches a high point on Wednesday. This is one of astrology's most happy-go-lucky influences, and when I say lucky, I am not exaggerating. Jupiter is the traditional planet of fortune, but in the 11th house it could be linked to a sports team if you're really interested in that, but also some kind of group or network. You also have Mars in that area and also the path of fortune, and they're all linking back to your sun magnificently at the start of this week. So if there's something you feel inspired about, want to share it with others or work collaboratively with people, there's lots there for you to work with. But also, as last week came to a close, Venus in your sign did clash with Uranus. And if there has been a friendship where you've seen something very differently from someone else, or even a love relationship, maybe part of the energy of the new moon in your sign is you reasserting what you need as an individual. And the energy in Gemini is very much about your future. So there could be some fresh starts or transitions. Now on Monday too, Mercury in its home sign of Virgo slams on the brakes, and it will be in retrograde through to the middle of the month. When it comes to marshalling your resources, you will need to show absolute precision. It's going to then inverse back into your sign. But also as this week begins, Venus makes its way out of your sign and into the sign of Virgo. Now that could bring a financial bonus your way. And in fact, the two come together in an alliance on Thursday. And that could be when you hear some particularly positive news. Because although Mercury retrogrades can cause issues, that's an absolute fact. If we can go into them with a very positive way of thinking, which is what Mercury's about, for you, maybe there is an opportunity to squeeze more from your resources, perhaps to be a bit more thrifty in some ways, to economize in others, but Venus can bring some opportunities. And to be honest, Venus in the second house can also see us attracted to the good things in life and splashing out on a little bit of luxury. But the host, Virgo, can also be very aware of virtue. So if you did spend some money, perhaps it would be on a nice treatment or perhaps a spa day, something that gives you some pleasure but has some health benefits too. But as this week goes on, the sun does start to forge a quincunx with Saturn. Saturn's in the part of your situation to do with where you're most invested, perhaps financially, but also emotionally, can be our shared resources, but it can also be where we're most devoted. Now, if someone isn't quite matching your enthusiasm around a hobby, interest, or even a relationship, there may be some tensions that do start to be created. Despite that, Mars and Jupiter are inching closer together as this week draws to a close, but Saturn does start to apply to Jupiter and they square off on the 19th. In fact, when Mars and Jupiter reach the high point of their connection mid-month, Saturn is also having an impact on them. So when it does come to those long-term plans, particularly when it is to do with raising money, invest in finance, perhaps it is an exciting project and you're more entrepreneurial, the flair that you're demonstrating at the moment is all brilliant and it can really dazzle people, but make sure that you're really scrutinizing the ins and outs, the business planning, who would do and contribute what, and if that is all clearly worked out, you have a great opportunity to make progress If it's not, something could be a little bit challenging, because if we think about it, Saturn can be restraint and Jupiter is growth. So Jupiter and Mars coming together in the part of your situation, which is very much to do with idealism, means that needs to be tempered with a bit of realism as this month goes on. But this is a week when you can certainly continue to energize forwards with the things or people or person who really excites you. Welcome, Virgo, to your in-depth weekly forecast for week commencing the 5th of August for the Ascendant, the Sun or the Moon. Just to say, my very special year 2025 personal horoscope forecast is available now, and you'll get the rest of year 2024 free and 30% off in my special package along with your life roadmap report. Please see the link below for more. Last week's new moon was in the part of your situation very much to do with the shadow side of life, our psychology, our emotional security, anything to do with where our instincts lie. But it was also priming you up in some ways, because Venus was in that sector too, to be conscious of what you want from your relationships. And because Uranus was clashing with Venus as last week came to a close, and Uranus is in a part of your situation to do with truth and freedom, if there has been someone who's been inhibiting you somewhat recently, as you come into this new week and Venus moves into your sign, if a relationship hasn't quite been working, maybe you're going to make the decision to at least have a period of reflection or even separation. Because one of the things about Venus moving into your sign is going to give you a much greater sense of your personal attractiveness. Now, Mercury goes retrograde, your ruler, as this week begins through to the 15th, and maybe one strand that's important to you won't necessarily shoot ahead at quite the pace you would like. But that's partly because the energy in the sign of Leo is wanting you to make sure that you really check out all the parts of your plan which are deeper and may require some more research. But ironically, there's another part of you that's wanting to aim high, be very dynamic and go for it. And that's because of the connection between Mars, the part of fortune, and Jupiter right at the start of this week in your sector of success. But they are feeding into that energy in your 12th house. So taking soundings, doing that market research, having some confidential discussions are all important. But by the middle of the week, it's true that Jupiter forges a sensational link to the Sun. You may get a surprise message, a card, someone could gift you something as an appreciation of your past generosity, or perhaps it's just going to be a thoughtful comment. But towards the end of this week, Saturn in your sector of relating does square up with Jupiter, or begins to. They become exact on the 19th. Just be aware, over this next couple of weeks, there could be a little bit of a battle of wills between you and someone influential. It may be somebody you work with, could be a boss or a line manager, and they may see something very differently to you. And because Mercury in your sign has slowed down, it's important that you just understand that this is a process. Once Mercury darts back into your sign on the 9th of September and the Sun is back in your sign, you'll really be ready to shoot forwards again in a much more meaningful way. So whatever your goals and ambitions are at the moment, they do need to be checked out. But around relationships, you may need a bit of space. There could be a new start, but a project could require a little bit more thinking, planning and research. Welcome, Libra, to your in-depth weekly forecast for week commencing the 5th of August for the Ascendant, the Sun or the Moon. Just to say, my very special year 2025 personal horoscope forecast is available now, and you'll get the rest of year 2024 free and 30% off in my special package along with your life roadmap report. Please see the link below for more. Last week's gorgeous new moon, which brought the week to an end, saw an amazing alliance with Jupiter in the part of your situation to do with adventure, growth and travel. if you do find yourself by the middle of this week arranging some kind of expedition or holiday with a friend or a group of people, it really wouldn't be a surprise. But there is a bit of a paradox threaded into this week, because your ruler Venus moves on Monday into a much more self-contained and rather private part of your situation. The other thing that could have happened with last week's new moon is it helped you to think about your future, perhaps in a more dynamic way. Jupiter and also Mars in your 9th house can be about independence and freedom. And if you haven't felt the vibes of being so good with someone, as Venus moves into your 12th house and also Mercury goes into a retrograde, you actually may want to step back, separate from something that hasn't been quite working as you would like. It doesn't mean to say you can't continue to approach things in a very dynamic way, because as this month goes on, Mars and Jupiter are going to inch closer together. That reaches its high point on the 14th, but they do start to be moderated as this week comes to a close by the rather stern energies of Saturn. Yes, Saturn is continuing in the part of your situation, reminding you of your responsibilities, but also the limitation in terms of your vitality and energy. So if you're dashing around doing all these exciting things, then maybe you need to get some early nights too. But seriously, what could happen towards the end of this week is your desire to be more spontaneous and freedom-loving and dynamic could in some ways compete with other parts of your situation which require you to be dedicated, conscientious, and attend to chores and obligations. You could feel a bit resentful about it. What I would say is that over the next 2 weeks from the end of this week, don't promise anything that you don't feel you can realistically deliver on, because it could be something that really becomes a little bit of a weight on your shoulders. But what about Mercury in the 12th house in its retrograde? You could be quite surprised at some of the thoughts that come up for you through to the middle of this month, when Mercury inverses back into your sector of friendship. It may also feel that some people, or one person in particular, is not being in touch as much as you're not being in touch with them. This can happen with Mercury in the 12th house, and we can start to see our minds wander. And one of the things with our minds wandering is we can start to create a story. And Mercury in the 12th house in retrograde can make us a bit more anxious. And so just be aware of that for sure. But as this week goes on, the Sun does also quincunx with Saturn too. So as much as the Sun is jolly, friendly, warm, and very, very exciting in the second decan of the sign of Leo, because that's very much about growth and action and being more dashing and buccaneering, because it's sub-ruled by Jupiter, there's stingy old Saturn reminding you that there's only a certain amount of things you can cram into each day, and this period of pleasure needs to compete with another part of your situation where people do have expectations, you do have your work potentially, and there is a certain amount of other things that you do need to attend to. But that privacy that's developing the back end of your chart does need careful marshalling. If you do find yourself feeling a bit worrisome about certain developments in your situation, important that you self-soothe. And Thursday's combination between Mercury and Venus, your ruler, could be an opportunity to see an old situation in a completely fresh light, and that's where a Mercury retrograde can come back to you in a much more positive way. Welcome Scorpio, it's your in-depth weekly forecast for week commencing the 5th of August for the Ascendant, the Sun or the Moon. Just to say, my very special year 2025 personal horoscope forecast is available now, and you'll get the rest of year 2024 free and 30% off in my special package, along with your life roadmap report. Please see the link below for more. Your ruling planet Mars continues to be very influential at the start of this week. It's very close to the part of fortune, and also Jupiter in the part of your scope that's to do with shared resources, investment and finance. But their link, and particularly Jupiter's to the Sun, which reaches a peak on Wednesday, really could be a green light moment for a project or plan or even job opportunity that really excites you. This could elevate your profile and gain you much more recognition than you've had before. So if there is a job that's really taking your fancy at the moment, this is a prime time to be very dynamic about going for it. Now, I can hear some of you thinking, but what about Mercury retrograde, Patrick? Well, Mercury retrograde on Monday for 2 weeks is in the part of your situation to do with your network, and it could be someone from your past is going to be in touch, and who, as much as what you know, is critically important at this time. If we only see Mercury retrogrades as being snags, we will experience snags. So set your intentions, because Mercury retrograde in your 11th house could see you rethink some of your longer term hopes. But equally, with Venus joining on Monday and the two coming into an alliance on Thursday, that could be when you get some excellent news. Could be socially, could be from an old friend. So do see a window of opportunity despite the Mercury retrograde. But as this week goes on, we also need to be mindful of the planet of restraint, Saturn. It starts to increase its influence over the planet of growth, Jupiter. And in fact, they come into an exact square on the 19th of this month. But that really dynamic duo of Mars and Jupiter, they're continuing to inch closer together, and that reaches a peak on the 14th of August. So what I'd say to you is that when it comes to someone you may be attracted to, the 5th house, that's where Saturn is, Saturn here can in some ways extinguish our passion because it can make us so cautious. But the 8th house energy and combination of Mars and Jupiter could see you really, really drawn towards someone, especially if there's a smouldering attraction and it's very physical. And perhaps what Saturn's just asking you to do is, if you do find someone making your pulse rate, just think through very, very carefully. Don't be too impulsive, because Mars in the 8th house is very much about instant gratification. And when we put Jupiter with Mars, it can see us almost feeling invincible, but also it can make us rather more amorous and desirous of having that intimacy. So Saturn could feel like it's a little bit of a sluggish influence in some ways, but it is trying to protect you. Now, what may be more complex is if you're already in a close relationship and it isn't really making you happy. Because part of a good relationship is not actually just the sex, it is the spiritual connection. And the 8th house can be very much to do with transformations. And however much we fancy someone, it has to have something a bit more than that. And perhaps what Saturn's going to do over the next couple of weeks is just make you very aware of this. So that Mercury retrograde, because it's in your sector of the future, asking you to think again there. But if you are footloose and fancy free, there may be someone in your social circle or who you meet through your work who is going to capture your attention over the next few weeks. Welcome, Sagittarius, to your in-depth weekly forecast for week commencing the 5th of August for the Ascendant, the Sun or the Moon. Just to say, my very special year 2025 personal horoscope forecast is available now, and you'll get the rest of year 2024 free and 30% off in my special package, along with your life roadmap report. Please see the link below for more. Now, the new moon, obviously, because it featured your ruler Jupiter in terms of the sextile, really brought some razzle-dazzle to the part of your chart that's very much about expansion, adventure and independence. So very much in keeping with the energies of your core nature. But Jupiter itself, your ruler, is in your sector of relating, and it links perfectly with the Sun in the middle of this week. So they reach the high point of their developing relationship. Jupiter can give us that sense that things will work out fine, that sense of confidence and faith, and it is the planet of luck, but it's in your sector of relationships. And it's also pretty close to Mars. If you take some direct action over the next couple of weeks, it could work out for you fabulously well. particularly in the middle of this week, because if you do something more spontaneous, you're going to find yourself connecting with people who share the kind of energy that you're generating. And that energetic exchange is what can bring some real rewards. But there are some other more conditional influences this week that do require some attention too. Not least that Venus moves on Monday right to the top of your chart. Don't underestimate how much charm, or at least diplomacy, or working skillfully with people around your work can actually open the doors of opportunity. But you may be thinking, but what about Mercury retrograding from Monday in my sector of success? Well, it does. And maybe something will need rethinking around your career over the next 2 weeks through its retrograde in your 10th house before it inverses back into your 9th. But also it could be an opportunity to perhaps learn some new skills or approach your situation in a fresh way. So, for example, redrafting your curriculum vitae, perhaps thinking about your personal appearance, particularly with Venus in the mix. If you're more stylized and you set the scene when you have an interview, discussion or presentation, you're going to have much more opportunity to cultivate just the right image. And in fact, by Thursday, Mercury and Venus really reach a high point. If you have applied for a role, there could be some good news despite that retrograde. But what about Saturn? Well, it is true that Saturn does forge an awkward angle to the Sun and a more testing and abrasive angle to Jupiter by the end of this week. And Saturn does continue in the 4th house. I think it's basically saying to you, just be aware of your limitations, but don't be dominated by them. You're someone who's always had a big and kaleidoscopic view of the world, and what Saturn's been doing over the last 16 months is in some ways asking you to become much more aware of your emotional needs, the need for security, shelter and nurture, and not be hung up about it. We can't always be dashing around being trailblazers. And all I would say is know those limitations, but don't let them rule you. There may be certain situations which aren't right for you at the moment because of your personal circumstances, such as family demands or where you live. Maybe a physical barrier to travel into a particular role or meeting a particular friend. So those are the type of things that you could be mindful of, but you can still work with what you've got to the best of your ability. So we get a delicate balance building up, which will peak on the 19th, between the dynamism of Mars and Jupiter as they inch together and become exact on the 14th, and the testing right angle of Saturn. So if you are attracted to someone, or there is a job that really captures your imagination, just be mindful of what can work for you the best at this time. But also remember what you've learnt over the last 16 months is so valuable in helping you to understand where you'd feel most comfortable and at ease. And that's where we all flourish. It's not necessarily where it's all very exciting. It has to feel right too. Welcome Capricorn to your in-depth weekly forecast for week commencing the 5th of August for the Ascendant, the Sun or the Moon. Just to say, my very special year 2025 personal horoscope forecast is available now, and you'll get the rest of year 2024 free and 30% off in my special package along with your life roadmap report. Please see the link below for more. There's some deeply transformational energies continue to work through your situation. This comes in part from the new moon at the end of last week, and the pulsating energy of that is very much to the fore as this week develops. And Jupiter, which was threaded into that event, the planet of opportunity, links with the Sun brilliantly right at the heart of this week. That can give you a lot of physical energy. In fact, Mars, the planet of action, is linking to Jupiter more closely by the end of this week. And that could see you really driven to achieve something practical over the next couple of weeks. But the link to the Sun is very much about what you can alter or evolve in your life. So For example, if there are resources that you could squeeze a bit more from using in perhaps a slightly different way, that's an area. But also the 8th house can be very deeply psychological. If you want to transform your lifestyle in some ways, the 6th house, very much to do with virtue, your physical strength, maybe that 8th house energy is going to give you some new information, and you're going to be guided in some way with the help of the new moon and Jupiter as this week goes on. And new information, particularly with Mercury going retrograde on Monday in the 9th house, can be really very inspiring to you. Now, Mercury retrograde in this area could cause some complications if you're traveling, particularly long distance, discussion of contract, or perhaps some kind of agreement, a legal matter, and it may be important to get some professional assistance. Despite that, with Venus joining with Mercury on Monday and the two coming together in an alliance on Thursday, this could give you a wonderful window of opportunity to see your situation in a much more knowledgeable way. And also, as this week goes on, the link between Mars and Jupiter, as it gets closer together, can just inspire you perhaps to do a bit more exercise, be a bit more active, or even apply for a job that may be a bit more enriching financially. It's just that your ruler Saturn starts to develop a right angle to Jupiter, which peaks on the 19th, but also forges a 150-degree angle with the Sun, which is quite complex. And if you are discussing something, particularly a financial matter, it may be that you're going to have to really dig deep in terms of your patience, because maybe with Mercury retrograde, someone will find it more difficult to understand the concept you're describing or even valuing your input in it. But that patience could be really critical, because if you keep developing your idea, you're going to find that there's going to be a high point by around about the 22nd of the month after the full moon, when maybe then they can start to get much more clarity on what you're offering. But this week definitely is a week that gives you rich possibilities in terms of any kind of transformation. Welcome Aquarius to your in-depth weekly forecast for week commencing the 5th of August for the Ascendant, the Sun or the Moon. Just to say, my very special year 2025 personal horoscope forecast is available now, and you'll get the rest of year 2024 free and 30% off in my special package along with your life roadmap report. Please see the link below for more. The glittering new moon in your 7th house is giving you a lot of opportunities to connect with others successfully. But it doesn't change the fact that Venus, that was in this area and rules the 7th house, was forging a rather aggravated link with your modern ruler of Uranus last week. So if there was a situation, or there has or is a situation ongoing, where there have been some tensions around a relationship, there may be some more healing to do. The great news, however, is that whatever your circumstances, whether you're single or would like to meet someone, whether you'd like to build a productive business relationship, or you'd like to work out a tough spot in an ongoing alliance, the thing is that new moon will provide its magic for some time, because Jupiter, the planet of faith and hope, was threaded into it as Jupiter comes into a perfect sextile on Wednesday. There could be some kind of discussion which really is very heartening and uplifting. But Mars in that area is very much about action, and in the 5th house can be more risk-taking. So if there is someone on your celestial radar that you fancy, maybe Mars and Jupiter are urging you, particularly by the middle of this month, to be more daring in your approach to connecting with that person. But just be aware, if you are trying to link up with someone in whatever guise, whether it is romantically, a friendship, a professional situation, Saturn, your traditional ruler, starts to apply a more restraining and constraining energy towards the end of this week, both to Jupiter but also to the Sun as well. And of course Mercury on Monday goes into a retrograde. But Mercury in the 8th house gives you a chance to rethink how you're using your resources, but particularly long-term resources. Check out the cost of your utilities, your banking services, anything where you're sharing an agreement. Maybe is you can squeeze more value by scrutinizing these areas. Ironically, Venus, the planet of money, joins the 8th house on Monday. And there could be something that's triggered positively, particularly by Thursday, when Mercury and Venus come together in an exact alliance. So maybe you can tease out a new opportunity by your skills as a relator, by your enthusiasm with Mars and Jupiter, but also the fact that you can be businesslike and practical. However, if there is shared resources or shared financial matter which has hit some kind of stumbling block, you may need to show quite a lot of patience as the week draws to a close, but you can do it. And the overwhelming potential over the next few weeks is to try to keep the lines of communication open. So with Mercury retrograde, just be aware that it does retreat back into your sector of relating from the 15th. And that moment over the following week is when you can actually make some very important decisions. And in fact, by the 29th of August, and Venus moves into your sister air sign of Libra, linking brilliantly with Pluto in your sign, you will get the outcome to the discussions that you're going to have this week. Whichever way they're going, you will get clarity by then, but I think a much better result than you may imagine. Welcome Pisces to your in-depth weekly forecast for week commencing the 5th of August for the Ascendant, the Sun or the Moon. Just to say, my very special year 2025 personal horoscope forecast is available now, and you'll get the rest of year 2024 free. And 30% off in my special package along with your life roadmap report. Please see the link below for more. Your ruler Jupiter, your traditional ruler, forges an amazing link to the Sun at the heart of this week. And if you recall, the new moon that brought last week to a close was in a part of your chart that could give you a big energy boost. And Jupiter's feeding into that event too. So if you're feeling good emotionally, that's going to help you to feel better physically. But also Mars is in your 4th house, can make us a little more impatient there. But as this week goes on, Jupiter reaches a perfect connection with the Sun on Wednesday. And that could be a time when you get some really positive news. It could be about a family matter, could be about a practical matter, or even just seeing how you're developing in terms of a fitness plan, how that's making you feel that much better and more energized. But at the start of this week, we can't deny that Mercury, the planet of communication, slams on the proverbial cosmic brakes in the part of your chart to do with relating. So there could be some crosswires through to the middle of the month. We can't deny that Mercury can create some glitches, but it also creates opportunities. And I think professional astrologers get a bit frustrated that popular astrology always sees Mercury retrograde for its flaws. So maybe it's a time to think again about how you connect. Are your listening skills ripe for being sharpened up a little bit? Are you understanding what someone wants from you as much as what you want from them? And you do have a wonderful option, because on Monday Venus moves to join up with that retrograde, and Venus in the 7th house is its strongest transit, and it's going to connect with Mercury perfectly on Thursday. And there could be a link around all these uplifting energies at the heart of this week. There could be some real serendipity. Maybe you're going to hear back from someone and get what you need in a situation, but if you are prepared to give and take a little bit, that actually will be really helpful rather than taking a fixed and inflexible position. It is true, to be honest, that Saturn in your sign, which has been limiting your vitality over the last 16 months, and perhaps creating a sense that things are going slower than you would like, a bit like walking uphill or through a field of glue, well, Saturn does apply in a challenging way to Jupiter by the end of this week, and also to the Sun. So the Sun in your 6th house angling to Saturn in the first means that what you want from a situation as an individual and what other people may want from you in terms of a commitment might not quite marry. But because Saturn is also in a square with Jupiter, which reaches a peak on the 19th, there's going to be a bit more of this over the next few weeks. Give and take is a very underestimated quality these days. People seem to take very entrenched, polarized views, and that makes for a lot of tension. So if you can just flow a little bit, you are a mutable sign, you can be very given. I think what Saturn has asked you to do, to be honest, over the last year and nearly 18 months, is to actually be a bit tougher in terms of always being the person who supports and helps people. But this is a week where if you can flex a bit, you'll get more from it in lots of different ways. Have a great week, Pisces.